A man would be convicted of a murder despite being 350 miles away when the murder happened. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Angela Mischelle Lawless. Viewer discretion is advised. Angela Mischelle Lawless, who would go by Mischelle to everyone in her life, she was born on August 2nd, 1973. And at the time of this case, she was living in Benton, Missouri. She grew up being a proud member of the Benton Girl Scout troops. She was a member of Unity Church, and religion and her faith was very important to her. In 1991, she graduated from Kelly High School. And afterwards, she had worked as a candy striper at the St. Francis Medical Center. At the time of this story, she was a freshman at Southeast Missouri State University. And she was one of 3 kids. She had a brother and also a sister. Everyone described her as a beautiful individual, inside and out. She was as sweet as a person could possibly get, and she just simply cared about everyone. She was not someone who ever got into any kind of trouble. She never ran with the wrong crowd. She was just simply your normal 19-year-old college student. But unfortunately, her life would be cut short, and that happened on November 8th, 1992. It was late in the evening, that November 8th, and a sheriff's deputy had gotten a call from a man named Mark Abbott. He also had someone come into the sheriff's station to report that there was a car abandoned on the side of the road, or they thought it was abandoned, they should say. And this was at the junction of Interstate 55 and Highway 77. It was near like a close to an off-ramp, I believe. So the deputy, Rick Walter, he drove his car out there to where they said this vehicle was. And as he approached it, it looked pretty much like the car was abandoned. The lights weren't on. There was, from afar, there was no indication that anyone was inside, but he was like, well, maybe the driver just pulled off the side of the road to fall asleep. Maybe they were super tired. Who knows? As he got closer, he's shining his flashlight, and then he looks inside the driver's side window, and in fact, there is a person hunched over or leaned over from the driver's seat on towards the passenger seat. His initial thought was, okay, this woman is asleep. Then he quickly realizes that is far from the case. When he sees blood kind of on the outside of the car, he looks in, he sees more blood stains, and then he opens the door to get a closer look and determines that this individual, this young woman, she is dead. And there is blood just soaking in her hair. There's blood on the seats. And then as he's calling it in at this point, we have a deceased woman here. And so as he's waiting for the others to arrive, he's looking around and he kind of looks and sees, more blood on the road with his flashlight, kind of looking around. More blood drops on the ground, and then he gets closer to the guardrail that was by the car, and he sees multiple spots where there is more blood. Looks like blood smears on the guardrail. He hops over the guardrail, and he keeps kind of looking down, and he sees blood in the grass, and it's down this little hill, this embankment. More blood. Looks like some kind of disturbance happened outside of the car, and more down this embankment. The coroner would determine that Mischelle had been shot 3 times. During the police investigation, they also found shell casings in the car, 3 shell casings in the vehicle. There was no gun at the crime scene. From what the crime scene looked like kind of outside the car, with the blood on the guardrail, with the blood in the grass down the embankment, they believe that somehow, some way, Mischelle was forced to stop her car, or she was tricked into stopping her car by someone. And then the person approached her vehicle and somehow attacked her, forced her out of the vehicle, and then tried to injure her, and maybe did injure her. And that's why there was sort of blood kind of going everywhere. They believe that this person must have followed Angela as she was running down this embankment and attacked her, and did God knows what to her. And then this individual managed to subdue her, put her back into her vehicle, where he then shot her 3 times. Her purse was in the car. Nothing seemed to be stolen from the purse. In fact, nothing was really stolen from the car at all. So the motive didn't appear to be robbery. The motive could have been potentially to sexually assault her, and maybe things just took a turn and it led to a murder instead. When the coroner was looking at her, they did take scrapings from under her fingernails, and they did find DNA. That DNA would eventually, down the road, come back to a man named Leon Lamb. That man was her boyfriend. And he was, regardless, the first person that police would investigate, because that's just sort of the natural thing to do. You look at the boyfriend first. You look at those who were absolutely the closest to her first. But he was very open with police. He said, we had intercourse, that night, and, she used her nails. Apparently, according to her friends and even her own diary, there were issues between the two of them. They had a rocky relationship, kind of a back and forth thing, but nothing that would suggest he would ever be violent towards her. Her diary said, no matter how mean he is to me, I still love the guy. They would take Leon and they gave him multiple polygraph tests. They did collect his, DNA and his fingerprints, and other than the DNA under her nails, which does add up to, having sex that night, other than that, nothing else connected him to the vehicle. Nothing else connected him to the crime scene whatsoever. He didn't own a gun, and there was just nothing. So they had to basically clear him as a suspect. He even had an alibi that was confirmed. Police would then try to look at the guy who said he saw the vehicle and he called the police about seeing the vehicle, Mark Abbott. They wanted to look into him a little bit because, he is a guy, right? And he did report this. Sometimes the people who do it are the ones to also report it, to take, some eyes off of them. Mark Abbott was a 19-year-old nursing student at the time. And apparently, Mark and his brother and some friends were also kind of into the drug scene, aka they distributed drugs in that area. So they brought him into the police station just to question him about things he may have seen. And then this is when he says he saw a white vehicle by Mischelle's car that night. This is something he did not say initially when he called the police to say he saw this car. The interesting thing is at first he described a man in that car as being a Hispanic man. And then he would later change his story to say that he believes the man behind the wheel of that white car near Mischelle's vehicle at the time now it's a black man. Never once did he say there was a white man behind the wheel of that car. That's important for in just a minute. But police were asking him a little bit more, okay, where were you that night? He said, I was at a party and I was driving home on that highway, and that's when I saw the car. He says he doesn't know why he stopped, but he says he stopped his car to get out to look at this vehicle. But he never said he saw a person in the vehicle, just that he just saw the car. Why he got out of his car to do that, who knows? But there was no physical evidence to connect him to the crime scene either. In terms of fingerprint evidence, it doesn't look like they really had any, that they found any. I know they dusted the vehicle for fingerprints, but I can't see anywhere where they have a solid print to match to someone. And there was no additional DNA found on her or in the car or anything along those lines. So they don't have, apparently, any physical evidence that would be able to connect to another person. So, police kind of had to put Mark Abbott to the side. And they were at a loss. They're like, we don't know who did this. We investigated Mischelle's life. She had no enemies. Sure, she had a rocky relationship with her boyfriend, but nothing violent. He has an alibi, and nothing else connects him to the crime scene. What do we do now? And they were at a loss. That is until 3 men came forward to say that another man had confessed to the murder of Mischelle Lawless. Who were these 3 men? Oh, upstanding citizens of the United States of America, also known as jailhouse snitches. These 3 witnesses were from Cape Girardeau Jail, where they said they interacted with a 17-year-old man named Joshua Keezer. And they said that Joshua Keezer had not only confessed to the murder of Mischelle Lawless, but he was bragging about it. So police were like, well, this must be credible, right? But do these inmates want anything? Of course they do. They were looking for lenient sentences or deals to be had for charges unrelated to all of this to be reduced. And so hey, if we give you this information, we can get something out of it, right? And they're like, yeah, of course, as long as it proves, reliable. Well, they find this Joshua Keezer. Do you know where he's living? He's living in Kankakee, Illinois. This is approximately 350 miles away from where Mischelle was killed. And that's where they found him. So they ask him, where were you this night? He's like, I was in Kankakee, Illinois. I was very far away. This is a 5 or 6 hour drive, depending. And he also said he had never met Mischelle Lawless, not once. He didn't know who she was. Police would interview people and close to him, and they said, yeah, he was actually at a party that night with us in Illinois. He was at a party 5 or 6 hours away from where Mischelle was found, and he was seen there within an hour or 2 time frame of when this murder took place, meaning it would have been physically impossible, unless he took a jet or he somehow managed to invent teleportation and get there and come back within moments. He could not have done this. But the 3 jailhouse snitches said, no, he confessed to it. They must be telling the truth, not the people who saw Josh at this party in Illinois. That couldn't be right. And then more witnesses came forward to say that there was actually a party there in Benton, Missouri that night. And Mischelle, she was at that party. And one female witness came forward to say, I saw Joshua Keezer at that party as well. And I saw him interacting with Mischelle, and they had a little tiff, it looked like. Oh, another witness. Okay, great. And then Mark Abbott, who, remember, said the man he saw behind the wheel of the white car that was next to Mischelle's was either a Hispanic man or a black man. He then sees an image of Joshua Keezer and says, that's the man. Joshua's clearly a white man. He's not Hispanic, and he's not a black man. But Mark Abbott said, that's the guy. So they arrested Joshua Keezer, and they charged him with the murder of Mischelle Lawless. He goes on trial, and the prosecution essentially is using the testimony of 3 jailhouse snitches who were all looking to get deals for themselves for lesser time being served in prison. And they're relying on the testimony of this female witness at this party who said, I saw Joshua, with Mischelle that night, just hours before she was killed. And so the jury believes the witnesses, even though the defense put up their own witnesses to say he was 350 miles away. Multiple people can tell you this. He had never met Mischelle in his life. There was no physical evidence, not a single shred of physical evidence at the crime scene to put him there. Nothing. No DNA. No hair had fallen out. No fingerprints. He didn't own a gun. The gun, by the way, has still never been found. There was nothing. But the jury said, nah, he did it. He definitely did it. And they convicted him of the murder. And the judge would sentence him to 60 years in prison. And that's the end of the story. All right, thanks for joining. No, that's not the end of the story. 16 years into Joshua Keezer's prison sentence. 16 years behind bars. The original sheriff's deputy who had gone to the scene that night, he is now the sheriff. And he says that he never really felt right about this Joshua Keezer person being the one responsible. And so he wanted to do the right thing, and he wanted to look into this again. As he's looking through the prosecutions and the whole case file, right, he sees something interesting. Those 3 inmates, they had recanted their statements before the trial. But the prosecution didn't say that, never mentioned it, but they still used them in the trial. The woman who had claimed to have seen Joshua at the party in Benton, Missouri that night, she also said, I can't say for sure if it was him, so I don't know if it really was him. It could have been someone totally different. But again, the prosecution was like, no, just, you saw him. And then the multitude of people who said that Joshua was in Illinois that night, and there was no physical way he could have gotten to that area. It just was impossible. He could not have done it. And that he had no knowledge of Mischelle prior. He never met her. They could not put the murder weapon in his hands. They could not place him at the scene with any physical evidence. And so this now sheriff, he worked tirelessly to basically get this looked at again. And because of that, Joshua Keezer was not only exonerated, he was declared innocent, meaning they now are saying there is no way that Joshua Keezer did this crime. He could not have done it. Now they are publicly acknowledging it. He didn't do it. He could not have done it. But he spent 16 years in prison simply because what it appeared to be was that the prosecution was like, listen, it's just easier. We'll just say it's him. We don't want to put the extra work in, right? It's him. We're just going to believe these jailhouse snitches. We're going to believe the testimony of a woman who wasn't even sure if it really was him she saw. And we're going to ignore and just forget all the testimony from people in Illinois who said he was there. So he sued, and he was awarded, I think it was $10 million. The really cool thing about him is that he is still, even though he's been exonerated, he's been, all of that, he is trying to be as active as possible and trying to find who actually killed Mischelle. He donated $10,000 of his reward money from the lawsuit to the sheriff's department, specifically to further look into this case. So he's donated his money, he's donating his time, and he wants the killer to be found. Even though he has no ties to this anymore. He can't be tried for it again or anything like that. But he still wants this to be solved. In 2013, they would exhume Mischelle's body because there were apparently, according to the coroner, I guess the photos that were taken, maybe there were injuries on Mischelle's hands that were never actually really looked at by the coroner or never really thoroughly examined. And so they exhumed her body. They wanted to look at all of the possible injuries. They wanted to just get a second look, and they did so, but nothing ever came from that. No new information has come out stating that, oh, we have a breakthrough. Nothing. And then they found out that Mark Abbott, the one of the key witnesses to getting Joshua Keezer put in prison because of his statement about, oh, yep, that's the guy I saw behind the wheel of the car that night. It was him. Well, it turns out he changed his story 5 years after Joshua was convicted. He is now saying he was there when Mischelle was killed. And he says he knows who killed her. He said a friend of his, a married man named Kevin Williams, is the one to have killed Mischelle. He was saying that Mischelle and this Kevin Williams individual, well, they were having a little affair. And not only that, but Kevin Williams was an informant for the sheriff's department who was looking into this case. Specifically an informant to the then sheriff at that time. And he was saying that he was with Kevin Williams when they chased Mischelle down in the car. And he says he then saw this Kevin Williams individual take her down this embankment, heard an altercation taking place, and then he said he heard 3 gunshots. Kevin Williams' then wife did apparently testify that Kevin was with her at another party, I guess. A lot of parties going on that night, apparently. And she said that, no, he could not have been anywhere near this crime scene. He was at the party. But then, years later, she recanted that and said that there was a time in that party where Kevin left for a long period of time. From what I understand, the new sheriff's department, new people, looked into him, and from what I gather, Kevin Williams was cleared. I think. I'm not 100% positive. The problematic person here in all of this is this Mark Abbott individual who continually changed his story, who, changed the literal skin color of the person he claims he saw, who now says he didn't see the murder happen, but now he's saying, oh, I was there when the murder happened. What's this guy's story? As it stands now, there is no one under arrest for the murder of Mischelle Lawless. There are no actual suspects, confirmed suspects in her case. The only person we know who didn't do it is Joshua Keyser. We know that. Could it have been this Mark Abbott person? I mean, he was considered a person of interest for a little bit, but there's no physical evidence connecting him to the murder either, really. I mean, there isn't. There's no physical evidence connecting this Kevin Williams person to the murder. There isn't. And that's because there's really no physical evidence there. They only had the boyfriend's DNA under her nails, but he was alibied and, he gave a reasonable story as to why it was there. It happens all the time. They're making love and fingernails get scraped and, all that stuff, but nothing connected him to the murder either. That's the problem, though, is that because they have no physical evidence left behind at the scene, no fingerprints, no additional DNA, they don't have the murder weapon. They just have they have the shell casings. That's it. There was nothing on the shell casings. There was nothing. So it's reasonable to think that it could have been any one of these people, or it also could totally not have been, and she could have been killed by someone completely different, someone completely random. Could have been a total stranger on stranger thing. I've talked about cases just like this all the time, where a woman is driving home in the middle of the night, something happens where she pulls over and she ends up being killed. And it's usually by a total stranger. So it is very possible, in fact, possibly quite likely, she may have been killed by a stranger. But what evidence will there ever be to actually find that stranger? That's the problem. So really, police kind of have to rely on someone coming forward and saying that they really do know something. This time they'll have to look really thoroughly into these people if there's ever any tips that come forward. But at the core of this, you have a young woman, 19 years old, who had just started her adult life. She's going to college. She has her own dreams and aspirations. She has such a full life ahead of her, but it was all cut short. Because why? Why? Why did this even happen? There is someone out there, there is at least one person out there in the world who knows what happened. And that would be the person who ended her life. There's always at least one person who knows, and it's always at least the killer. Killers do like to talk. They do love to run their mouths. And surely this person has told someone. There may have been more than one person involved. People may be afraid to come forward because they think, maybe they'll come after me if I say anything. You can always report this information anonymously. So if you do know something, anything, about the murder of Angela Mischelle Lawless, you have got to come forward to police. They did recently reopen it in 2019, but it appears that not much has come from that. But they are trying to actively investigate this, which means there is hope. There is a chance for you to come forward if you know and tell them what you know. So please contact the local sheriff's department there in Benton, Missouri. You can contact the Attorney General's office there in Missouri, and you can report your information anonymously, and you can help her family, her friends, everyone who knew her and loved her. You can help them find closure and answers, and you can help punish the person who took this young woman's life for absolutely no reason. But that is it for this case, True Crime Aroonies. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you have tripped, fallen, and stumbled your way into this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please, please, please. Give the video a like, because that helps push the content out. And also, I tell true crime stories over on TikTok, on Instagram, and Facebook. All of my socials are below in the description of this video and in the link tree in the description. I would love to have you on board. Next, if there is a case you would like me to cover, please email me. The email is listed below. Go to my case list, which is in the link tree below, and scroll through the list. I know it's a long one, but look through it. If you do see the name, you don't have to email it to me. It's already there. I pick the cases I cover as randomly as I can. I will cover it eventually. I just don't know when. If you don't see the name, then email me just like the name, where it happened, when it happened, and I will eventually, I promise, add it to my list to cover down the road. Next, if you would like to support me in any way, I do sell merch. My family is kind of looking for some help right now. My mom is still in the hospital as of the time of this video, doing better, but you know. So you can support me by following me on all the platforms and here, watching the ads and all that. But also I sell merch in the link tree below. I sell t-shirts and hoodies and a wine glass and stuff like that. We do ship internationally, so there is that. If you have a Discord account and you want to join my Discord server, it's in my link tree as well. Please be over the age of 18 or else you'll be kicked out. And then, but yeah, it's a really chill place to hang out and just chat. It's very quiet, it's peaceful, not a lot of crazy conversations going on. So yeah. But that is it for this video, True Crime Aroonies. I shall see you for the next video, which should be tomorrow, I'm hoping, I think. So until then, I shall see ya for the next one. All right. Goodbye.